So, the Modern Warfare 2 beta has ended, and I wanted to share my honest thoughts on the beta with you guys. This is coming from the perspective of someone who has been consistently playing Call of Duty multiplayer since Call of Duty 4. I played the beta for 12 plus hours daily and literally played this beta more than the entirety of Vanguard's multiplayer for the last year. Again, you're listening to the perspective of someone who spent every single possible second of the last few weekends playing the beta. I also didn't just camp or rush around with the meta weapons of the beta. I used every single gun extensively and tried a variety of playstyles like going knife only, sniping and quickscoping, ray gunning, and God help me, tactically camping. Oh, my bad. I meant to say playing as a sentinel. If you just want a general summary on what I thought about the beta, I think that even though this was just a Call of Duty beta, it was better than the last 3 years of Call of Duty, and this game is gonna slap. Now, this is just my opinion, but this was the best Call of Duty beta that I've ever played, and I had a ton of fun playing it. That being said, the game is obviously not perfect, but we can help Infinity Ward get there with our feedback. Spoilers, I have some hot takes on this game that even surprise me, but we'll get into that later. I actually want to start this video by talking about the big issues that it seems like everyone had with the Modern Warfare 2 beta. There was tons of things that people were constantly complaining about on Twitter. You guys know what I'm talking about, right? It seems like everyone was just kind of copying and pasting the same opinions and thoughts about how the game is supposed to be on Twitter. And obviously, I want to talk about these criticisms and complaints about the Modern Warfare 2 beta, but I also want to provide helpful feedback, and I also wanted to dive in deeper about how this affects different types of players. We can probably break down the entirety of the Call of Duty community into 5 different categories. There's more casual or newer players to the COD series, there's more competitive players who have been playing for a very long time, there's campers, rushers, and then there's just everyone. So for this section of the video, I'm not just going to be giving solutions to the problems that people have with the Modern Warfare 2 beta, but I also want to specifically highlight how this affects the different sections of the Call of Duty community. Let's just start with some of the big ones. We have Dead Silence as a field upgrade instead of a perk. Similar to Modern Warfare 2019, you can't just have Dead Silence as a perk or run like Ninja. You have to have Dead Silence as a field upgrade, which means that you have to earn it progressively throughout the game and then time it properly when you want your footsteps to be hidden. Now, here's kind of the problem with the Modern Warfare 2 beta. When you use Dead Silence, it actually makes this pinging noise that everyone around you can hear. So in a nutshell, if you actually want your footsteps to be hidden and you don't want people to know where you are, you have to wait roughly 2 to 3 seconds before you start running around and once you've started to use Dead Silence. There's been a lot of conversation about how Dead Silence needs to be changed from a field upgrade back to a perk like it's been in older Call of Duty games. But here's the thing, this also kind of ties into another issue that people were complaining about, which is that the footsteps are too loud by default. What I found from my experience playing the beta is that the range at which you can hear people's footsteps are too loud. Like directionally, I felt like I could hear enemies' footsteps too easily and I could pinpoint where they were going to be before I could even see them. This tends to lead players to pre-firing around corners before they even actually see or know where anyone is, and it also definitely helps campers because they don't need to rely on visibility. They can just listen to when people are going to be peeking around corners. Now, me specifically, I play Call of Duty while wearing headphones. I don't blast my volume per se. I actually have it turned down quite a bit, but I still felt like it was pretty easy to hear enemy footsteps. The footsteps being extra loud is something that benefits campers and more casual players because they don't have to wear a headset, they don't have to have a gaming headset to be able to hear you and try to figure out where you're coming from. Whereas on the flip side, if you're someone who's a little bit more competitive or likes to rush around the map, having Dead Silence as a perk is definitely a benefit, but in this game, it's a field upgrade. I personally feel like the best solution for this, and I think it's what Infinity Ward is going to do, is they're going to tone back the footstep volume a little bit so you can't predict where people are coming from as easily, but I'm pretty sure they're just going to leave Dead Silence as a field upgrade. I do think it's kind of ridiculous that Dead Silence takes a couple of seconds to actually like pull up the thing and use, and then it also makes a pinging noise which gives away your position. It seems very counterintuitive. So if Dead Silence is going to remain a field upgrade, I feel like you should be able to use it a little bit more quickly, which does kind of regress it to how it worked in Modern Warfare 2019. And this makes it seem like from a game design perspective, like this is probably how Infinity Ward looks at it, is that they're saying that Dead Silence is maybe kind of like overpowered and is actually a very strong thing to use. And this change that they've made in Modern Warfare 2 essentially punishes people for rushing and moving around the map. And what's kind of strange too is that when you use Dead Silence, you're still not technically completely silent. When you tack sprints, you're still making noise. Overall, the changes to footstep volume and Dead Silence as a field upgrade in the Modern Warfare 2 beta are definitely punishing rushers more than they are campers. And overall, I'd like to see them kind of dial those changes back a little bit. Next up is one that I just constantly have seen over and over and over again, which is the lack of a classic minimap. For those that might not be aware, the minimap in the Modern Warfare 2 beta works very differently than like previous Call of Duty Duty games. The way the classic minimap in Call of Duty works is that if you're firing an unsuppressed weapon, you show up as a red dot on the minimap. In order to counter that, you have to run a silencer on your gun, so that way you can shoot your gun and you won't show up on the minimap, and it also reduces your muzzle flash and your presence as far as it goes for the sound that you generate when you're shooting a silenced gun. Infinity Ward themselves said that they don't want to punish players for shooting their guns, which is why they're firm in their decision to not have red dots on the minimap. I've basically been playing Call of Duty for half my life, and I love the classic minimap, and I would have no problem if the classic minimap was back in the game. But on the flip side, I had no problem with the minimap in the beta. I didn't necessarily feel hindered in the beta. I felt like I was still able to play the way that I do in every single Call of Duty game, you know, running around the map, still shitting on campers, regardless of not having the classic minimap. And oddly enough, it was probably to my benefit, because when I was making classes, I didn't have to put a silencer on. I didn't have to reduce my damage range or make my guns weaker. I was still able to build my guns to be as strong as they possibly could, and I could rush around the map and not be punished for doing so. On top of that as well, I ran UAVs, so I was actually still able to see red dots on the minimap, and I was also using a new ultimate perk called Bird's Eye, which would basically flash an advanced UAV later on in the match. So I had no problem with the minimap and finding people. I have been kind of quiet about this opinion specifically because I know that not everyone agrees with it, and that's totally fine. We all have different opinions and thoughts about the Modern Warfare 2 beta, and that should be okay. We're able to agree and disagree with each other. All I'm saying is that regardless of whether it's a classic minimap or this brand new minimap that a lot of people don't really care for, I don't really feel like it impacted my experience playing the beta that much. So yeah, I think overall, I'm actually kind of indifferent about the minimap. They can change it back to the classic one if they want to, or they can leave it as is. I'm still playing the same way that I always play. Next up, let's talk about perks. This game has something called perk packages, which is kind of unnecessary. It seems like a weird change that didn't need to happen, but they're trying to innovate the perks. The way it works is that you essentially have two regular perks that you can pick, and then you also have a bonus perk that you earn later on in the game, and then there's also an ultimate perk, which tends to be a little bit stronger and more helpful. So all in all, once you start making your way roughly through the midway point of the match, you're gonna have 4 perks. One thing I do like about the perk packages is just the fact that you can easily create a perk package and select it and have it ready for a class. But we didn't necessarily need to have 4 perks and a bonus perk and an ultimate perk to do this. We could have just had perk packages with regular 3 perks. So I'm not exactly sure why Infinity Ward decided to try to like reinvent the wheel when it didn't need to happen, but hey, once you get used to it and you understand how it works, it's really not too bad. And at the end of the day, you end up with 4 perks instead of 3, so you ultimately have a bigger advantage. But since we're talking about perks, I want to talk about visibility. Now, I didn't personally experience this whole issue of muzzle flash messing up my aim. Like, it didn't seem to mess with my aim or visibility of enemies. That could be because the aim assist on console is pretty strong, but I also played on PC too, and I didn't really see this as an issue. But when we're talking about visibility, one thing that I hope Infinity Ward does do is bring back red enemy nameplates above the enemy's heads by default, and you can only hide them if you run Ghost or Cold-Blooded like previous COD games. I think a lot of people have talked about this as well, but you can very easily confuse your enemies with teammates because the way that the Modern Warfare 2 beta works is that your teammates by default have like a blue name tag above their head, but the enemies don't have anything. In my opinion, the removal of the red enemy name tags mostly benefits casual players and also people who camp or rush because you can't really tell who's who. It makes it harder to distinguish someone who is maybe hiding in the back camping, but it also benefits people who are running around because you might be able to sneak around a corner undetected because someone didn't see the red name tag above your head. I think ultimately this change actually hurts more competitive players who want to know like every little bit of information about what's going on in order to hunt down and kill people, kind of similar to the classic minimap. Like, I feel like the classic minimap is one of those things that is benefiting the more hardcore players, and I think that a lot of the complaints we've seen on Twitter are coming from the hardcore Call of Duty fan base. Sorry, I was getting a little sidetracked, but ultimately I think that Infinity Ward needs to make enemies and teammates more distinguishable. I haven't seen too many people talk about this on social media, but let's talk about the spawns. When it comes to the regular 6v6 stuff, I'm a little disappointed with the spawn logic and how it works. In my opinion, when you're playing team deathmatch and domination, the spawns felt like Call of Duty Ghosts. TDM spawns are completely random. I wouldn't even bother talking about team deathmatch because there really isn't a lot of map flow. You just kind of appear in random places at any given moment really far away from the action, which is good for having safe spawns, but there also isn't really much flow in team deathmatch. It's very random, and that tends to make the matches very slow, especially if you play a larger map like Museum. Domination starts to get a little bit better, but one of the things that's really tough is that if you have like A and B flag, for example, and the enemies only have C, the game will not consistently spawn enemies around the C flag area. Instead, it will just randomly spawn them in different locations of the map. They can end up up spawning near the enemy B flag or enemy A flag, and then they just take it, and it causes all kinds of confusion. It really messes with the flow of the maps, and ultimately I felt like the only game mode that had consistent spawns was hardpoint. But even then, you would get some really random spawns in hardpoint, and you'd be really far away from the objective, and it just kind of kills the flow. I understand the desire to have safe spawns and not have people constantly rage because they're getting spawn trapped. So ultimately, I'd like to see Infinity Ward tweak the spawns a little bit to just keep players more engaged and focus on the objective. Real quick, I've got to talk about third person mosh pit. I don't really have any negative things to say about it. I'm just really glad that Infinity Ward brought it back. For me personally, it's a really cool thing to see because third person was first added in the original Modern Warfare 2, and for them to bring it back in this game kind of feels special to me. It is a little weird that when you go to aim in, you turn back into first person. In the original Modern Warfare 2, when you would aim in, you would really just have a tightened crosshair, but it still felt pretty easy to adapt to, and I'm really just glad that we have this mode back in a Call of Duty game. But next up, let's talk about slide canceling. Slide canceling is something that became very present later on in the life cycle of Modern Warfare 2019, and I think Warzone as well. What players essentially do is they go to do a slide, but they're able to cancel that movement very quickly and aim back in and start shooting people. I don't personally slide cancel, and I don't really want Modern Warfare 2 to have it. And if you're someone who likes slide canceling and you're one of the people who figured out how to do it in the beta, just know that it's probably not going to be in the full game. There's a pretty good likelihood that Infinity Ward is going to patch it because it is a movement exploit and something that probably should not be in the game at all. And again, I'm primarily someone who's rushing around the map and constantly moving, but I do not like movement exploits. G-sliding in Black Ops 3 was one thing because a lot of people use that to be able to have fun in free run and get some really fast times, and also kind of just traverse around the map faster. That's not really what people are doing with slide canceling. They're trying to make themselves an extremely hard to hit target while also still being able to aim in and kill people. I just ultimately think it's kind of cheap and only rewards people who want to exploit the game. If it somehow manages to stay in the game, then we're all just gonna have to deal with those people, like the movement kings. Oh my god, there was this one clip that went viral on Twitter, which was just so stupid. This dude had like terrible aim, but he was just like spamming YY or triangle and like sliding all over the place, making the game honestly just look terrible. I don't know what this is all about, but we're gonna move on. Player. Here's something I think we can all agree on: play of the game still being broken. More often than not, it is impossible to get a play of the game working in this game. This has been a persistent issue for like the last 3 or 4 years of Call of Duty games. Let me paint you a picture. You're playing Call of Duty and you just got like the most insane kill chain, and you're waiting until the end of the match to see it become play of the game, only for the play to break after the first 3 kills, and then the camera angles are all over the place and you can't even see anything. This is something that is still regularly breaking even in the Modern Warfare 2 beta, and they have to fix it. For certain game modes and in certain situations, they did bring back final kill, and regular final kill cams seem to work okay, but they need to fix play of the game. In the grand scheme of things, it is kind of a smaller issue, but most people who are playing this game are going to see a play of the game at the end of almost every single match, so it should be working properly. Speaking of working properly, we need to talk about these LUI errors that happen very often in the beta. This happened to me over a dozen times, and it was really strange. Like, I would just be in the middle of a gunfight, and after I killed the person, or if the person killed me, there would just be this weird error message on the screen. I'm not exactly sure what an LUI error is, but it would take me back to create a class, and then I'd have to pick my class, and then I'd spawn back in. This could happen randomly in the middle of a gunfight, which was just really strange. I'm not exactly sure what causes this error, but I also noticed that if you're spraying an LMG for too long, it also seems to lag the game, and it could even cause this issue. So I'm not sure if it's just the server or your own game just being overloaded with too much stuff, like too much information going on in the match, and essentially it's like a memory freezing error. But hopefully this is something that Infinity Ward plans to address later on. Another thing I want to talk about is the Survivor Ultimate perk, which is essentially Last Stands back in Call of Duty. This is another hot take, but I don't think it's bad. Just hear me out. I do think that the main negative for this perk being in the game is that it's going to be severely annoying for snipers trying to hit montage clips, because they're essentially going to waste a shot and it can ruin their streaks. I do see how it has a place in no respawn game modes like Search and Destroy, and also for people who are trying to go on very long kill streaks, like trying to get a nuke or something like that. It's Call of Duty. There's a lot of BS things that happen and a lot of deaths that happen really quickly, especially in a game where the time to kill is very low. So having something like this does kind of remedy that situation. It gives people another chance to get back up and get back into the fight. And here's the thing too, you don't get to shoot a pistol or a primary gun like it's Final Stand when you're using the Survivor perk. You just sit there like a potato, hoping to get revived by a teammate really quickly, or self-res yourself and pray that the enemy doesn't sneak up behind you for the most humiliating execution of your life.
I think he found the corner crash too.
Oh my god, I just got But with all that being said, I do think that it should be balanced out a little bit differently. I think that certain kills should bypass the ability for someone to fall into last stands, such as headshots, knife kills, or throwing knife kills. There needs to be some kind of counterplay. It honestly felt really off to shoot players in the head and not insta-kill them. There was a situation where I had to throw 2 throwing knives at someone just to kill them because they had Survivor. The first knife knocked them down into last stand, and then the second one killed them. From a gameplay perspective, that just felt kind of wrong. I think that precision kills should counter the Survivor perk. Here's something that I also thought was kind of odd for the beta. There were no in-game surveys asking for input on how the last match you played went. This is something that we saw in the Black Ops 3 beta. We've seen it in other Call of Duty betas as well. And it's really weird that they're not asking for our feedback on how we felt about the last match that we just played. This is a beta after all. I mean, they want our feedback, right? No, I'm kidding. I mean, I would at least hope that they do want our feedback. Why not give us in-game surveys that ask us about how the games are going? Especially for the casual players, because if you want to retain those casual players, the easiest way for them to give you feedback is to just do it in the game after they've just played a match. Most people are not going to necessarily go on Twitter or Reddit and talk about how they feel about the game. That's more or less reserved for the more hardcore fan base. So moving forward in every single Call of Duty beta, I think that they should periodically do in-game surveys where you can give them feedback. Next up, let's talk about people cheating in the beta. Yes. You heard that correctly. There was actually a mod menu that was being sold. You had to buy it and pay a subscription service to cheat in the Modern Warfare 2 beta. Virgins. Infinity Ward said that they were already banning players in the second weekend though, and Karina literally reported someone who was cheating and they actually got banned. She was given an in-game notification that said that the reported player got banned. So that being said though, I think that Infinity Ward and Activision need to go a lot harder on the cheaters and hackers this time around. I don't care if it's a mod menu, Cronus Max, whatever. These people need to get permanently banned off of every single Call of Duty game in the existence of the humanity of the planet of the universe for life, with no chance of coming back. Fuck them. These gremlins ruin the game for everyone else. They're selfish little assholes who have fun at the expense and misery of people who just want to play and enjoy the game in a legitimate way. And I don't want to see or hear shit about hackers for the next 2 years. Do what Rockstar is doing, get the FBI involved, sue them into oblivion, send them to jail, send them to the gulag, send them to the fucking Waffle House. I don't give a fuck anymore. Keep cheaters off of this game. I like this game. I hate cheaters and hackers. They ruin the experience for literally everyone. And if Infinity Ward and Activision is concerned about player retention and people staying on this game and playing it and spending money on it, then you need to do something about the people cheating and hacking. Next up, let's talk about the maps. For 6v6, I felt like some of them were just a little too big in my opinion. And there were a lot of spots that you can camp and head glitch, but they also felt pretty realistic. Like it's a weird thing. I kind of love the maps, but there's also things I don't like about them. And it's interesting because all of these maps still played out faster and better than like basically every map in Modern Warfare 2019. One thing that was kind of strange is that a lot of us were expecting to play the Grand Prix map, but for copyright reasons, I'm pretty sure they had to just take it out, so we didn't even get to play that. And part of me is wondering if that map was more of like a medium to small size map and we just didn't even get that, but it probably won't even matter anyway because I'm sure they're gonna have shipment in the game and we'll just be playing that 24/7. And if not, then I would be pretty shocked because every single Call of Duty game is getting shipment as like a standard map now. But yeah, let's talk about the ground war maps because I also felt like they were a little too big and not very vehicle friendly despite there being a lot of awesome new vehicles and mechanics. One of the coolest additions in ground war is the transport helicopter where you can actually walk around the back of the helicopter, you can shoot enemies from inside the heli, or you can jump out and parachute to a location. That to me is so awesome, but when it comes to the other vehicles like the ground vehicles, it weirdly doesn't feel like the maps are designed for vehicle play. The maps don't feel as easy to traverse in vehicles. It kind of feels like the pathing for the vehicles is an afterthought, like there's a lot of open roads and stuff, but a lot of the actual players on foot aren't ever out in the open. You don't really find them. They're usually kind of in the more dense areas where they're camping in buildings or like windows. So it didn't really feel like you got to see as much action when you're playing in the vehicles. And on top of that as well, I'm very surprised that you can't really destroy the environment to get to certain places. Like for example, if you're driving a heavy tank, we're talking about a tank by the way. If you're driving that thing on the road, it cannot run over a light pole. A literal tank cannot run over a stop sign. Now again, this is just a beta, but I'm really hoping that it's something that Infinity Ward can change because there's no reason that these vehicles should be so limited. And honestly, as far as it goes for ground war maps, I'm praying that the full game has better ground war maps for flow for different types of play. Call of Duty has an amazing chance here to compete with Battlefield, and this is my specific suggestion for what I think they should do with ground war that would make it a lot more fun for us to play. We need one specific smaller ground war map that allows for a lot of infantry kills and really isn't focused on vehicles. Think of like the prison map from Battlefield 4 where there's just a ton of chaos, a lot of gunfights. I'm essentially suggesting a shipment style style map, but for ground war, like 32 versus 32. Now, obviously, it wouldn't be the size of Shipment. It would need to be significantly bigger than Shipments to actually play out well and not be completely terrible. But what I'm suggesting is to essentially have a ground war map, 32 versus 32, that more or less plays out like Shipment and isn't as focused on vehicles. And on the flip side, there should be another ground war map that caters more towards vehicle play, where there's not as many buildings, not as many close-off areas, and it's overall just a more open map. This would be an amazing addition to Modern Warfare 2 Ground War because it would give the vehicles a bigger chance to shine. I do want to talk about time to kill, but I also feel like it's kind of a non-point, and hear me out. The overall consensus is that it seems like the time to kill in the Modern Warfare 2 beta was too fast, especially with specific guns. Like for me personally, I felt like the MP5 and the AK-74U were very dominant up close. They were very strong, but on the flip side, when you start to shoot people at range, they easily get outperformed by assault rifles. One thing that was very apparent in this beta, no matter what you were playing, is that the strength of the guns you were using varied heavily on the actual range that you were engaging people at. For example, the Expedite 12 shotgun dominated on the farm map when you're just kind of like sitting in the middle area. But if you start to move further out from that range, the SMGs start to have like this insanely fast time to kill range. But when you start to go at further distances, the assault rifles start to dominate, but then past that, you have like the battle rifles and the marksman rifles. And in my opinion, really the only gun that could perform at every single range effectively was the Signal 50. In Ground War, I was able to snipe someone out at like 500 meters and kill them. But I could also no-scope and quick-scope people up close, and they would die pretty easily. And obviously the way that Infinity Ward has kind of balanced that out is that the snipers don't ADS as quickly. That is actually something that I would like to see sped up, but again, when we're talking about the time to kill, we do need to keep in mind that this is just a beta. And since Call of Duty is treated as a live service, we get a lot of weapon balancing and patches and stuff like very often, so I don't really care about the time to kill. I felt like the weapons fit into their categories pretty well, and even though the time to kill was a little fast on some of these guns, they're probably just gonna end up getting balanced. Again, this is just a beta. Time to kill and the balance of the weapons is 100% gonna change in the full game. But I do have a lot to say about our last topic. Skill-based matchmaking! Who saw that one coming? When I was streaming the Modern Warfare 2 beta, one of the questions I think I saw more than anything is, does this beta have skill-based matchmaking? Which it 100% did, and it has not gone anywhere. So let's talk about it. The conversation around skill-based matchmaking is starting to get very annoying to me because it feels like some people are being super disingenuous about how it works and how it affects their experience. I want to be very transparent and honest about how I personally feel about skill-based matchmaking and how it affects my experience. When I log on to play Call of Duty, there is nothing that I desire more than logging on to shit all over terrible players and hit amazing clips and just do like the most insane stuff on Call of Duty. But that's just not how it works out, especially with skill-based matchmaking. What typically happens when I play Call of Duty is I'll play one extremely good match and I might end up hitting some clips, I might just have a really good game, whatever. But then what happens after that is the game starts putting me in matches up against people who are also really good. And what happens after that is I tends to not play as well up against those players and I might not really hit any clips. I mean, maybe I will, maybe I won't. But what I've noticed, especially in this beta, is that a lot of it has to do with what you're using. Like I said at the start of this video, I'm not the kind of person who is just flying all over the map with the meta weapons and just trying to relentlessly destroy the other team. I don't care about that. I like to play Call of Duty in a variety of ways and use all kinds of different guns. And what ends up happening is that if I want to use a good gun and do well, I'm going to be punished for doing that because the game is eventually going to put me in a match where people are doing nothing but sweating and using the best guns. And that's not how I consistently play the game. For example, one thing I noticed in the beta is that if you go knife only, like only trying to use the knife and the throwing knives in the game, you'll probably end up doing really terrible for a couple of games. But then the game starts to catch on to that and it realizes you're not doing well, and it puts you into lobbies where, as a knife only player, you end up having a significantly easier chance to actually go around and knife people and get knife kills. But once you start to do well as a knife only player, the game will eventually give you more difficult lobbies. Now, if we can all be honest with ourselves for a second, I think we can all agree that when it comes to the typical Call of Duty experience, especially if you're someone who's been playing this franchise for a very long time, one of the most fun things you can do is just play against people who are worse than you and have a really good game. Whether that was dropping a bunch of nukes in the original Modern Warfare 2 or hitting sniper clips or whatever, it's pretty obvious that that is where most people get their enjoyment and fun in the game. That's kind of been a long-running tradition for Call of Duty. And I think what a lot of people are frustrated with skill-based matchmaking is that they don't get to experience that as much because the second they start to do good, they get put into lobbies that are essentially playing out very boring. Everyone in the lobby ends up having like a 1 KD or going negative. As far as it goes for objective game modes, sure, they might be kind of close, but I don't think anyone really necessarily cares that much about winning or losing. It's more so about the matches actually just flowing and playing out in a way that is fun and engaging. And I think the reason why people get frustrated is because the second you have a good match, you end up playing a lot of boring matches after. Now, I don't know if this is a consequence of skill-based matchmaking just actually not working that well, but what also kind of sucks about the current skill-based matchmaking algorithm is that it definitely encourages people to reverse boost or just not care and do terribly, so that way they can eventually get easier lobbies. It's definitely not a perfect system. And even though I know it's like impossible for us to see this, we do need to try to look at it from Infinity Ward's perspective. Essentially, the whole reason they have skill-based matchmaking is because they're trying to protect newer players who literally have no clue what's going on. So that way they can have a better experience and not end up just dying repetitively, like get like 100 deaths in one game, get no kills, have a terrible time, and then quit Call of Duty forever. On top of that as well, there's players in the Call of Duty community that have disabilities, and they should definitely be protected from people who might be trying to game the system and exploit the skill-based matchmaking. So here's ultimately my take on skill-based matchmaking, because if Modern Warfare 2 has it, then it's very clear that it's not going to be going anywhere anytime soon. But I think with the proper feedback, we can get the skill-based matchmaking to be a little bit more fair for the players, and I think that they should be more transparent about how it works. My take on this is that the regular, casual, typical multiplayer for Call of Duty should have a toned down version of skill-based matchmaking that is not as strong. And then definitely have a separate ranked playlist where you can earn ranks and rewards for sweating. And I'm talking about like giving these ranked players some really awesome shit like custom skins, weapon skins, ranked icons, custom colored clan tags, you name it. And definitely have a good working leaderboard system as well. That way the people who play Call of Duty in a very competitive way, who like to sweat and use the meta guns, use the best guns in the game, can have a place to play and leave the typical multiplayer for people who do play more casually and just want to have fun. And even though I'm pretty sure it can't happen for this game, in the future, I think it would be great if we had a hybrid quick play and server browser feature for casual game modes. So that way everyone can just play what they enjoy the most. Since it's pretty apparent that player retention is their #1 goal with Call of Duty, they need to do their best to continue to cater to everyone and let them enjoy the game the way that they like to play it. And the last point I wanted to make is kind of just an overall feeling about the Modern Warfare 2 beta and how our feedback ties into it. Regardless of how any of us feel about these complaints like the minimap, dead silence, the spawns, the visibility, all that kind of stuff, the time to kill, one thing that we should all keep in mind is that at the end of the day, people who are playing this game are going to play it however they want to. If you're a camper or a sentinel, if you're a sentinel, you're gonna play like a camper. You're just gonna do that. If you're someone who likes to fly around the map like a freak and rush around and just drop people instantly with the meta guns, you're gonna do that too. Obviously, the developers can make choices that will influence certain playstyles and allow people to do certain things in a more effective way, but it has always been a staple of the Call of Duty community that people will exploit something to the fullest. So whether or not they make changes that nerf the playstyles of campers or nerf the playstyles of rushers or nerf the experience for casual players or nerf it for competitive players, just keep in mind that people are going to play this game however they want to. And we should also keep in mind that this was not a full game. This was just a beta. I know it's going to be similar to the full game, but I think people are also getting really heated about small things. I know it will be similar to the full game, but I think people getting so heated about small things is a sign that people were treating this beta like it's a full-fledged game, which is weird. And they might have felt that way because this beta actually just had so much content. Oh my god, dude. I remember back in the World at War beta, like before World at War came out, the beta only had like a handful of maps and guns. It was nothing compared to this one. And there was actually a long period of time where Call of Duty games didn't even have betas to play. And we're lucky that this has become a regular thing. We're able to play and check out the game before it comes out, make content on it, do all kinds of stuff. Ultimately, I'm pretty grateful that Infinity Ward continues to give us the chance to play the game early and give them feedback and advice on how to improve the game. I am definitely 100% excited to play this game and make more content on it. I really do think that this is going to be a good year or two of Call of Duty. And even though we might not completely agree with each other on how we think the game should be, I do hope that Infinity Ward continues to improve the game. So with that being said, thank you guys very much for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed watching my honest feedback of the Modern Warfare 2 beta. God, I hope this video is not too long. I feel like I've been talking forever. This is going to be like a huge video. But even if this video is long, I did want to sit down and take the time to give my feedback and give you guys my honest criticisms of this beta. Up until the launch and the full release of Modern Warfare 2, I have all kinds of videos planned. I recorded a lot of videos in advance. So if you guys did enjoy this video and you want to see some more of the Modern Warfare 2 beta, make sure to drop a like. I'll see you guys later. Alrighty, well, there's only less than 5 hours left of the beta. I have no brain cells left, so I am ready to call it here.
Are you though? I don't think you are.
No more beta.
I think you want to play forever.
Can I?